Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. It is January 3rd today, 2020. Happy New Year. I'm doing a video today called 10 Things That I've Learned in 10 Years of Professional Astrology. The reason that I'm doing this is because I realize it's a new decade, and this is officially now my second decade of doing astrology. I started in 2010. So, full-time professional astrology has been a joy. It's been a pleasure and a blessing and a privilege. And so I'm really thankful to be able to do this. And I thought I'd share some insights after my first decade of doing full-time astrology. Um, in the meantime, I want to say a big thank you to everyone for supporting my Kickstarter. 690 backers, just an amazing show of support. I'm so thankful to have so many amazing readers, clients, fans, friends, kindred spirits, fellow astrology nerds. So thank you for supporting my work. And I hope that this channel, the content that I create, and the heart that I try to pour into it would be of spiritual service to you and to anyone you share it with in the year ahead. So thank you, everyone. Now, I would feel bad if I didn't mention that there's been some really big current events. Saturn and Pluto are coming together to conjoin. It looks like the U.S. might be going to war with Iran. Like, it's kind of crazy. I'm hosting a Saturn Pluto panel talk next Wednesday night where you can hear 8 professional astrologers get together and talk about Saturn Pluto. I may do some additional content depending on how the news unfolds. I sometimes like to take my time a little bit when there's heavy news and heavy transits before just saying anything. I like to meditate on it a little bit, and it came about late last night. I didn't have much time today to really let it sink in. So maybe over the weekend or early next week, depending on how things go, I'll make a video speaking to that. I'm saying this because I've gotten a lot of emails asking me if I will. So in the meantime, here are the 10 things, no particular order, that I've learned from 10 years of doing professional astrology. And maybe at the end, a few hopes that I have or prayers that I have for the next decade. God willing, I'm here doing astrology for another decade. So the first one is this. This is the first simple insight about astrology that I've seen over the course of 10 years. And I'm guesstimating somewhere between maybe 8 and 10,000 clients that I've seen so far in my first 10 years. It's been a very busy 10 years, very fruitful. I've had a lot of different types of experiences and readings and classrooms and had great teachers. I have great colleagues, I have great students and friends. And I'm so thankful for all of these experiences. There are a lot of lessons and deep learning that I've had being a professional astrologer, what to speak of being a perpetual student of astrology myself. So the first one is that nobody is entirely happy with any area in life. You know, one area might be good for someone, but there's going to be another area that's not so good. People come into readings never entirely happy with their job. They have a good job, they have a good paying job, but something's wrong with it. With their kids, they have nice kids, they have a happy marriage, but there's some health problem. Or their marriage is good, but there's this thing they wish they could change about their partner. Friendships, financial reality, childhood, parents, property, whatever. The lesson that I've had in doing so many charts over so many years is that it's okay to be unhappy, that nothing is ever kind of perfect. There's no time or moment in which everything sort of comes together and it's all like perfectly complete and everyone's just, totally lit up and happy. And I don't say that to be dismal. I don't say that to be like a dream killer or anything. I just have noticed that astrology has helped me take the pressure off from myself and off from life and allowing it to just be what it is and trying to find joy and contentment within the kind of consciousness that I cultivate in relation to the world, which is up and down and constantly changing. And so seeing so many clients with so many, you know, different areas of life, people come to readings with complaints and with difficulties and with trials. And astrology really isn't here to make it all better or to tell us when in the future it's all going to be better or all going to be coming together. It's about teaching us, it's teaching us that there is something called karma, that there's karmic weather patterns, that we can know something about them, and that because we know something about them, we can walk with them consciously and maybe with a deeper level of introspection. And that can create a kind of happiness that moves through and accompanies us like a good friend throughout all the areas of life, none of which are ever really perfect. I think that's probably the biggest thing, but maybe it is the number one thing. I don't know, but it's a good thing that I've learned. And I've been afforded that opportunity because I've seen so many charts and so many people coming with roughly the same kinds of issues in all of the same areas of life that we all deal with. So that's the first one. The second one is that most people experience mixed fortune. There's this kind of illusion out there that my chart is really great or my chart is really bad, or you've probably never seen a chart so messed up, or do I have like a really special rare chart? Aside from the time when I was like courting my wife, I was just starting my career and like trying to flirt with her and told her that I thought she had a really great chart. Like it's like not really a part of professional astrology to sit down and be like, oh my God, you have such a rough chart, or oh my God, you have such a great chart. Astrologers probably shouldn't say such things. That is the blemish on my career, though, is flirting with my wife. And every time she tells the story to people, I'm always like, oh man, you're making me look like a terrible professional. But anyway, there are no awful charts. There are no great charts. Most of us have mixed karma. Most of us have some stuff that's good, some stuff that's really difficult. You know, there are moments of great pain and tragedy and loss, but more often than not, I don't see charts that look exceptionally crappy or exceptionally great. After you see so many charts and so many clients over a long period of time, my experience is that you start to recognize that most of us exist with some highs and some lows. And it's good to know that as people who take in astrology, that you are with kindred spirits in the middle ground of experiencing mixed karma, you know, some good, some bad. And that's okay. Um, Astrology is here to help us get out of our addiction to the highs and lows. Sometimes in modern spiritual new age circles, there's this kind of obsession like, oh, you're not growing spiritually unless you're having a transformational crisis every week. And I think it's actually just the opposite. I think that astrology is here to show us the highs and lows, the karmic weather patterns that are always shifting and changing, so that we can find a place of deep satisfaction, curiosity, contentment, investment, meaning within subtler ebbs and flows, as well as the big highs and lows, so that we really don't mistake our addiction for highs and lows with contentment or with growth. Um, Astrology is here to help us find soulfulness, which is different than big events, transformational crises, and big breakthroughs and all of that kind of stuff, which is good. It happens. It's part of our life path. But I think the second lesson is that we experience mixed fortune mostly, and to be content with smaller fluctuations in karma and to recognize the archetypal within them uh, is just as valid as needing some kind of intense, constant, high or low experience. And that's something astrology's taught me over time. Number three, most of us think that we're more in control of things than we are. Astrology has taught me over many years that it's really hard to break out of habits, patterns, and deeply ingrained karmic realities. We are habituated in many ways. Just try, kicking sugar for a week. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to recognize or understand the ways in which we are entrained to certain kinds of unconscious patterns or habits. Astrology is very helpful in helping us to get more free will, to become more conscious. But in order to do so, we have to recognize to some extent that we are deeply conditioned and that we are not nearly as in control as we think we are. And I've seen a lot of new age woo, just being in yoga industry, shamanic, writing a book about ayahuasca, being in the ayahuasca world for 10 years, being with Reality Sandwich, being with, astrologers. The modern spiritual world is filled with a kind of self-help glamour of improve yourself, be the king, be the champion of your life, be sovereign, be amazing, all this stuff. And while I'm not necessarily against any of that, there is this kind of idea that everyone is the author of their own reality, and to an extent that's true, but we just don't realize that the choices that we make, the most habitual, unconscious, and sometimes toxic choices, are actually the reality that we're creating, and that it's a lot harder to break out of them and experience real freedom than we think it is, and therefore we're a bit more predictable than we think we are, and not that that's even if we are predictable, even if life is predictable, there's always freedom in how we can shift our consciousness in relation to certain karmic realities that might be more fixed. But anyway, I've just noticed over a long period of time that the mantra of create your own reality is a little untrue when it comes to astrology. just showing me day in, day out for a decade of my life now, that our lives are, from the time we're born, there are events on the horizon that we're here to experience. And it's important to remember that ancient astrologers believe that those events are not the result of some kind of impersonal mechanism that's at play that has taken away your free will, that the events of karma that may be more locked or fated, or we're not as in control of as we think we are because of previous choices we've made as well, not all of which we understand or are aware of. That's a reality that has been hard for me to realize. I don't say it to take some hard, triumphant view. It's been hard to recognize that primarily through my own experiences, and to see how my own unconscious patterns set me up karmically, and to just recognize the deep work that it takes to really cultivate freedom and to move out of some of the unconscious patterns that we're habituated to. Astrology helps us with that, but its message is also that, freedom takes some work. So the fourth one is that we're often really distracted by material designations, and sometimes astrology makes that worse, but it should make it better. So for example, sometimes, we're associated, we think of ourselves as our clothing style, our bank statement, our sex, gender, identity, race, creed, culture, tastes, dislikes, whatever. And there's a sense in which we do have identity designations in this world of all different kinds that are valid and important. But astrology can exacerbate our sense that that is what I am, rather than being a spirit soul who is here experiencing those realities, those temporary designations, those upadhis in Sanskrit. So it doesn't help when astrology is used to double down on false identifiers. I'm a Scorpio, I'm a this, I'm a that, my chart is like this, my chart. I've noticed over time that astrology has taught me, by seeing so many people, so many charts, my own chart, that I've gotten worn down by being labeled or designated as anything, even if it's I love the language of astrology. The psychological language of astrology is amazing. But for me, it's just gotten to a point where it's like, I feel like who I am is deep and vast and ongoing and alive, and thinking of it in terms of the planets, the chart, the houses, the signs, doesn't help me. Thinking of myself in relation to the karmic field that the chart is describing is really exciting, because it invites me into a relationship with my own psychology, with my own behavior, with the events of my life. But astrology ideally is not here to get us, kind of more identified with stuff, right? It's here to help us get back to the sense of being a spirit soul, an eternal being that was never born and will never die, that can't be more or less than exactly what it is, and that ultimately is looking for relationships with everything that the chart describes. So to have some sense of healthy distance from the chart while also entering more deeply into a relationship with what the chart is describing, that's been my journey with astrology over the past 10 years. That's what's come forth. In that sense, I don't look at my chart all the time and people are like, oh, you're this or you're that, or you're Mercury or you're Mars, or it's so funny that you're like this or like that or whatever. There's a level at which I relate to that. There's another deepening level in which, I don't really care about my birth chart that much anymore. I really love astrology. I love looking at people's birth charts. I love helping people with astrology. I love thinking astrologically. I just don't care so much what my chart says. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's hard to explain how that emerges over time, but it doesn't emerge with any sense of not liking astrology, though. Some people will always ask me that. Does that mean you don't like astrology? I'm like, no, I love astrology. I just don't care so much about my birth chart. So, anyway, number 5, people never question good karma. Typically, they only question bad karma. So they'll be like, if something really good happens, people generally are like, oh yeah, that's totally destined to be. It's fated. If something, and it's karmic, I built this up over lifetimes. If people experience something bad, they're usually like, well, how can I change this, or how can I fix this? And there's really, I think for all of us, astrology works at its best when we especially when the good things come, if we go, I may not have deserved that. I'm really thankful. And when the bad things come, saying, oh, maybe it could have been worse, and let me get curious and again, thankful. Um, if we can become students of both the good and the bad karma and not get overly elated or deflated by either, that's when astrology really starts working on us. And that's when astrology starts to reveal to us our real freedom. And we start to make choices that the universe responds to more personally and more sensitively. Then everything is like a really joyful learning experience and relationship with reality, and love starts to emerge. But it's hard if we remain attached to good karma and averse to bad karma. And you see this in practice over, again, so many charts, because people never question good karma. They always question or concerned with how to change bad karma. So that's just something I've noticed. It's something I notice in myself. Number 6, these are some observations about professional astrology industry. Sometimes when people are trying to become astrologers, they mistake thinking that in order to become a good astrologer, I need to impress other astrologers. Maybe there's something about that that's true, but generally speaking, what I've learned is that becoming a good astrologer mostly has to do with your capacity to serve other people in their growth spiritually. That's my own opinion, of course, but don't try too hard. I guess my advice to people is, after 10 years of doing this, is like, if you want to become an astrologer, if you're thinking about astrology, don't worry about becoming popular. Just worry about learning in integrity the best you can, to embody astrology the deepest way you can, and to serve other people. And in my opinion, that's really what makes a good astrologer. It doesn't hurt to have people like you. I'm not saying you should, be turning your nose up at the greater astrological community or anything like that. It's just, I notice a lot of people saying, how do I publish and write books and things like that, that my peers will be like, oh, kind of get into the club or the ivory tower or something. And, we can miss the real point of serving others when we do that. Number 7. Yeah, number 7. In my opinion, if you want to be a good astrologer, it's not enough to just have a lot of knowledge about astrology. You really have to do readings. Now, I know that not every astrologer in the world is going to be someone who does readings, and you don't have to do readings to be into astrology. But I guess the point I'm making is that I see a lot of people online throughout my 10 years of doing this who talk a lot about astrology, but don't actually read for other people. And it's hard to, in my opinion, it's hard to have real authority about astrology and what things mean or how they should be read or understood if you've never read for other people. So I think that if one at least wants to have a degree of authority about astrology, that people should think about trying to get some experience serving others with astrology. And again, that's just an opinion of my own. And I think we learn maybe the most about astrology by doing readings anyway, just in terms practically, like how to read and how to use different techniques and so forth. And you have to do it in a way, in a setting where there's something at risk, there's something at stake, you're vulnerable, you could get things wrong. That's a part of it, and it's part of how we grow too. So number 8 on the list is that I think 8 and 9 are sort of similar. 8 is, I think astrologers need to have some degree of a spiritual lifestyle, which means caring about their health. It's going to look different for everybody, but I know personally that I don't want, at this point in my life, anybody reading for me who's, really not taking care of themselves. I'm not going to be the one to offer some prescription about what one's lifestyle should look like as an astrologer. I have my opinions about it, what works for me. But I would say that, some degree of austerity in certain areas is probably important, like not overindulging, overeating, not too many intoxicants, not being a total, sleeping around with every single person you meet. You know what I mean? These are my own kind of opinions again, so I don't mean to push them on anyone, but just taking care of one's energy and remembering that our body is a temple for an indwelling spirit soul, and that when that temple is clean and in good working order, we become better conduits for those that we serve with astrology. And I think that that's something I've learned over 10 years, is that if astrology is just kind of a popular fad, if it's something that we're doing kind of like buying a purse or a like a pair of shades or something, it's just something to, like, it's like a what do you call it? Like an add-on, you know what I mean? And it's not coming from a spiritually committed lifestyle where you're caring about the quality of your consciousness and your your body, mind, and so forth, then I think that it doesn't work as well as it should. Number 9 goes along with it, which is that I really do believe, this one might sound a little conservative, and I don't mean to sound judgmental, but I really do believe that astrologers need to have a spiritual practice of some kind. I don't think astrology works from atheistic or even agnostic perspectives in the way that it's supposed to. I think that there needs to be a committed belief in divinity, or even, there are, of course, um, there's so many different religious and spiritual paths out there. I don't mean to be prescriptive, but just, being like, yeah, I don't know what I believe. I don't know if anything's real, or which would, I guess, be, not, maybe that's not even really agnostic, but you get what I'm saying. Someone who's just like, yeah, whatever, I just do astrology because it's fun and it works. Or someone who's like, yeah, I don't believe in it. It's just a fun artistic language or something like that. I'm personally more averse to those approaches to astrology, because I think that a committed belief in something and in spiritual practices that are a part of that belief, are a necessary part of astrology. I say that because the ancient mystics who created astrology or received astrology believed so. So whether that's yoga, Buddhism, Christianity, shamanism, so many different, paganism, there's so many different paths that lead a person to a spiritual lifestyle that is mindful, that's healthy, and that displays the need to regularly commune with the gods, with nature, with divinity, with the soul. Those kinds of practices, along with a spiritual lifestyle, I think are needed for astrology to really do what it's meant to do. Yeah, I don't mean to be judgmental in that. I think one of the amazing things about astrology is that it does work in some ways, regardless of what you believe. And I think that's a testament to the fact that astrology is real and coming from a divine place. Um, so I think that often astrology works in spite of what we believe or how pure we are or impure we are. And we should feel really grateful for that, because it's a spiritual art form that doesn't need us to be perfect to work. At the same time, I think we should be mindful stewards of what we've received, and try to be a clean channel as best we can, being forgiving and patient with ourselves, and compassionate, and seeing the best in others as well. So that's my 9th one. The 10th one, finally, it goes along with the first one, I guess, kind of a bookend, which is that astrology is really a way of seeing eternity in the midst of all different kinds of temporal events and timelines, whether they're mental events, emotional events, physical events happening inside of us, happening outside of us. The more that we take this language on, the more we start to see the archetypes, the forms, which the Hermeticists, for example, believed were thoughts in the mind of God, which Plato believed were a conduit to the ultimate Godhead. And yogis believe similar things, all of the early practitioners of astrology. So the more we learn this language, the more we learn to see heaven on earth. We learn to see the union between heaven and earth. And I believe we need that, because I believe that when we try to go it alone without the companionship of divinity, the companionship of the stars and planets, the eternal, the vastness that's so much bigger than us, when we bring that into our sphere of activities and concerns, and the lives that we're living, I think it creates soulfulness. And I think that's what we all crave: soulfulness and love. Is it deep? Is it real? Is it alive? Is it living? And is it relating me in love to everything around me? Ultimately, astrology does that by impressing upon us heaven and uh, the eternal within all of these constantly changing events in our lives. When we do that, whether you're, for me, over 10 years of reading for people, talking about astrology, doing astrology, reflecting on my own chart, all of it, that's the takeaway more than anything else. When I get the news that, there's been a military leader whose car has been hit by a drone, and now Iran, there might be a war, and I know that Saturn is conjoining Pluto. That event is not just, it is an earthly event, right, with a whole ecology around it, but it's also, and it is also reflective of these eternal patterns. And when this event can become a source of transcendental meditation for me and contemplation, I can pray and be with it and see it. Um, and I can see it within myself. I can see it within the world. I don't feel alone. And I think, it can be a lonely universe. You know what I mean? We already have to go and deal with the dramas here. We can't help it. We're hurled into it. The river of material energy is constantly flowing. We have no choice but to participate in the world. But isn't it amazing that we can do so? And the language of astrology teaches us how to see eternity while we're doing it. That's amazing. And that's probably my number one takeaway. And I get that not so much anymore from my own chart, plus seeing so many other charts, talking about astrology, seeing the news, writing about astrology. And this is the spiritual practice of astrology that's emerged for me over 10 years. My prayer for the next 10 years is that other people would be able to take to not just the spiritual practice of astrology, but to accompany astrology with spiritual life and spiritual practice and spiritual community, because I think it really takes off when all of that comes together. To that effect, you may know that I'll be starting, it depends, my new website's being finished right now, should be ready by February, at which point I'll be launching if you sign up for my newsletter, on my website, I'll be launching some private content on Bhakti Yoga for those people who are more interested. This channel I'll be updating as usual with lots of astrology content. I already imbue a lot of my content with, yoga, philosophy, and things like that. This will be a little bit more dedicated for people who are interested in cultivating more of the spiritual practices that may accompany your interest in astrology. If you're feeling like you need something more like that, that'll be available only to those people who sign up for my newsletter. So that's what I've got for you. It's been a cool decade of doing astrology. I'm so happy. I decided to start this YouTube channel almost, I think, 2 years ago now. And it's been really cool. It's been cool to build an audience and to talk with all of you and to hear your stories. What are your realizations about astrology? And what are your intentions for astrology in this new year? How does it help you grow? And what are you learning about astrology? I'd love to hear from you guys. Okay, take care, everyone.